Welcome, my friends of the interwebs. This is going to go on my MadBadVoodo channel. Why did I just take those off? I can't see Jack squat without them. Hey, listen. I'm not a big contest entry person. I'm just not. I've had my share of contests. In fact, to be honest with you, I probably am as responsible as anybody for even starting the whole contest thing on YouTube. So I, for the most part, don't get into a lot of them. Just the way it is. However, every now and again, somebody has a contest that I have to get involved with it for whatever reason. And this particular person that's having a contest is Superfly Fat Guy 859, who you've heard me mention a million times. He's one of my favorite people on YouTube. Just a genuinely nice guy who is very big as far as community support goes. He's the kind of sub that you really want in your life because he's cool. He's just a cool dude, and he's just I can't say enough about him. In fact, I'm just gonna stop. Okay, he's an awesome guy. What I found intriguing about this particular contest were the rules, and one of the rules were to tell a story, your favorite story about your father. And it intrigued me because this is really not something I'd ever really thought about at all. You know, my dad's been gone for 5 years last September, and it seems like yesterday. I mean, it literally seems like yesterday. And I mean, I can remember the last time that I actually spoke to him and seen him. It was yeah, I mean, it seems, anyway. So I thought when I watched Superfly's video, I started to think, what would be my favorite story about Big John? By the way, we called him Big John. I think Scotty D actually started calling him Big John first, way back when we were probably still in high school. And because my dad, I don't think in my entire life ever weighed more than 135 pounds, and he was 5'8". And when he passed away, I think he was about 80 pounds, maybe, if that. But yeah, so Big John, we called him Big John. He was an interesting guy. My father was born and raised in a place called 4 Mile, Kentucky, in southeast Kentucky. He was a hillbilly. I mean, he was the quintessential hillbilly. And interestingly enough, he came from a time period back then where there was no check drawn. There was no sucking off the government tit. There was none of that nonsense. So back then, if you wanted to be gainfully employed, and there was no welfare, you know, so it was either gainfully employed or not. But if you wanted to be gainfully employed, you had to hit what was referred to as the Hillbilly Highway, which was 75 North, Interstate 75 North. And you would go to places like Cincinnati or Toledo or Lima or Detroit to get jobs. Most of the hillbillies would get jobs in the automotive industry. And though my dad was different in that, that's not what he did. He got a job. He ended up being a railroad fireman, and then towards the end of his railroad career, he was a promoted engineer. But I mean, you know, there were those kinds of jobs up north. They just didn't exist in southeast Kentucky. That's for sure. So anyway, but that doesn't have anything to do with me because I didn't know my dad back then. I wasn't born yet. So I thought about it. It was really interesting, and it was bizarre because for the next couple of days after watching Superfly's video, I kept thinking to myself, what would be my favorite story? My dad and I had a very interesting relationship. He was tough. He was a very smart man. He would have done really well, I think, in college, but he never had that opportunity. But he and I butted heads like a lot of, I think, fathers and sons do. We didn't see things quite eye to eye on a lot of things. A lot of things. And I wouldn't even say that we had the closest relationship. Although, looking back at it, he was always trying to teach me things, whether I knew it or not. He was always trying to teach me lessons in life. And it's so crazy looking back at some of the lessons that he taught me then, or was trying to teach me. Sometimes my thick head wouldn't allow that. But kind of interesting to see how at the time I thought he was nuts. But now I look back at it and I think to myself, Jesus, you got to be kidding me. Why didn't I listen to him? You know? Even the smoking thing. My dad was a smoker, and I never smoked till I was 23. And I ended up smoking for 18 years, but I never lit up a cigarette till I was 23 years old. And I can remember my dad telling me, you know, years before I ever started smoking, he's like, look, it's very costly. It's a costly habit. It's a nasty habit, and your best bet is not to get involved with it. And I'm sure most parents tell their kids that. But I listened to that for the longest time, and then one thing led to the other. But anyway, what was my favorite story? Let me get back to that. I guess I'm babbling about this because, sadly, it was challenging, to be honest with you. I could tell you a million tragic stories about my relationship with my father. But to find one that I would classify as one of my favorites, it was hard. And that saddens me. It really, really, truly saddens me. I can still remember when I found out he had died. I was actually had been in Kentucky. At that time, I was living in Kentucky full time, and I was coming home. And funny thing is, I can't even remember why I was coming home. But when I say home, Toledo, I have always considered my home. Although I've always said that I had dual citizenship between Kentucky and Ohio. But I was about halfway. Well, I was about halfway home. So I still had another 3 hours to go, and my phone rang, and it was my mother, and she said these words to me: "Dad passed." And I was just like, it was weird, it was surreal, because I can remember my knee-jerk reaction, and this was almost immediate. I said, "My dad's dead?" Because I just couldn't, you know, it was strange because my dad had been very sick for a very long time. And, I mean, really sick. And, but it was weird because he'd been really sick for so long that it was almost like, this guy's going to live forever. In fact, I remember saying to one of my buddies who asked me, "How's your dad doing?" I said, and I'll never forget this, I said, "I think that bastard's going to outlive me." And, you know, it's just the stupid things, the weird things that we say. So anyway, so I pondered this contest from Superfly. And I thought, you know, I dug, and I found one, and it's a good one. And I think it's a good one. See, a lot of the things that my dad, like I said, he was always trying to teach me things. A lot of the things I didn't even realize were going on. But a lot of the things that, you know, he kind of molded me into really represents who I am today in so many ways. My politics, my business sense, all these things really came literally from a hillbilly from the hills of southeast Kentucky. That's why it's always been funny to me when people, especially people from Kentucky, would look at some of my videos and really miss the whole picture and think that I was making fun of southeast Kentuckians. And really, that was not ever the case, because most of my family is exactly that. Literally, most of my family, well, half of my family at least, are exactly what you see in a lot of those videos. And I have a lot of respect for those people, a tremendous amount of respect for those people, because they can survive, no doubt about it. But anyway, let me tell you a story. I know I've taken the long road, as I always do. Let me tell you a story. I was about 9 or 10, somewhere around in there, 9 or 10 years old. And I remember, I'll never forget this. We had we had a little boat. We lived real close to Lake Erie, and we had a little boat that my dad had actually traded a camper for. I don't know. My dad was always trading for things. It wasn't a really big boat. In fact, to be honest with you, it had no business going out on Lake Erie. And there did come a point, which is one of the many tragic stories, where that boat sank in Lake Erie, along with me, my dad, my brother, and our neighbor. You know, it's a tragic story. Nobody died, but thank for the grace of God, nobody died. But anyway. My dad, being a self-sufficient type of hillbilly, he wasn't going to go buy no damn night crawlers. No, not when he had two boys. You know, he had two sons. There's no reason to go down to a bait shop. Got some bait getters right there. So I remember one day, I'll never forget this actually. He had a garden hose. He was out in the front yard watering the grass, and I remembered that it had rained just a couple of nights before, and I thought, why is he watering the grass? Well, he says to me and my brother's just like a year and a half, not even a year and a half older than I am. He says to me and my brother, he says, he gave us 2 flashlights, one each, and like a plastic pail, like a butter dish or something. I don't remember anymore, but in fact, I think it was a butter dish. Now I think about it, and he is getting dark, and he takes us out, and he says, "I'm going to show you guys how to get worms, how to get night crawlers." And he did. He showed us, and I'll be damned. I mean, you know, yeah, worked pretty easily. I mean, you know, my dad drank a lot. So it's got, well, anyway. So my brother and I went out that night, and we had a flashlight in each hand and a bucket, and we ended up getting something like 30 dozen night crawlers. I'm not kidding. We were pretty proud of ourselves. And sure enough, we went fishing the next day, and the next day after that, and you know, those night crawlers were awesome. I think we were fishing for walleye, if I remember right. So it was kind of, we became very good at that. Now there was a couple of other guys in the neighborhood that had boats, fishing boats, and my dad said to my brother and I one day, he says, "Listen, you guys want to make some money?" And he was always doing stuff like that. You want to make some money? You know, and usually it was something we didn't want to do. And usually it was a chore of some sort or some bullshit, hard, back-breaking labor that he was trying to con us into. Not to say that my dad just wouldn't have flat out told us, get that done or whatever. But anyway, so we were skeptical when he said, "You want to make some money?" And he said, I'll never forget this. There's a guy named, 2 guys right down, literally down the end of our street. One guy's name was Sonny, and the other guy's name was Otis. Sonny and Otis. Both of them had boats. So my dad said to us, he goes, "Listen, I want you to go down there, and I want you to tell Sonny, and I want you to go over to Otis's too, and tell them that you're willing to sell them night crawlers for 50 cents a dozen." Now you remember 50 cents, back then was a lot. We're talking 1970, probably 76 or 78, somewhere around in there. I'd have to do the math, but in the late 70s. Or probably mid to late 70s, somewhere around in there. And we went down, and sure enough, and both those guys were like, "Well, hell yeah! How many night crawlers can you get us?" They were serious fishermen. They were retired guys. They fished just about every day. And we're like, "Well, how many do you need?" And the one guy said, I don't remember if it was Sunday or if it was Otis, but one of them said, "As many as you could possibly give us." So that night, my brother and I got something like 100 dozen worms, 100 dozen night crawlers, and at 50 cents a piece. We're talking $50, which I'm telling you, I know this sounds crazy, but that was a lot of money then. It was a lot of money then. Hell, I don't even know what gas cost, but I know it was well under $1 a gallon. And got paid, boom, cash on the barrelhead. We were in business. We were little entrepreneurs. So my dad says to me, he goes, "Listen," he goes, "you're going to have to get a refrigerator because your mom's not going to put up with you keeping those worms in the fridge." Because when you get the worms, you would have to put them in the fridge, keep them cool. And so my dad said, "Get the trade." There was a newspaper, a little publication called the Trading Post, and it had like people were selling shit. And it was kind of like the eBay of its day, except for it wasn't an auction. You just put, "I want $50 for an old refrigerator." So anyway, we find a refrigerator, and I don't remember now what we paid for it, but it was within, reason. It was an old one. It was one of those with the pull-down thing and all that. We put that out in the garage, and there was plenty of room in that refrigerator for my dad's beer and our worms. Somehow we got conned into buying Dad's beer refrigerator. At one point he was talking about putting a tap in it. So anyway, we were doing okay, just starting out selling to those two. And then they had friends. So like Otis would call down and say, hey, my buddy needs, 4 dozen worms or 5 dozen or 10 dozen or whatever. And this was going on, and it was getting to the point where, I remember we raised our price to 75 cents, and then at one point we raised them, and we always stayed lower than the bait shops. But at one point we were at basically $1 a dozen, and we would go out. My brother and I would go out in a night, and we would get 100 dozen worms, and each one of us would make $50. And that really was something that my dad fostered in us, this entrepreneurial spirit, which stayed with me my whole life. Now, not so much my brother. I think maybe it's rekindling now. He's got something going on. But my brother spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of the Marine Corps. But for me, it was something that my dad had taught me that literally stayed. And to this day, I give him all the credit for that. Every bit of that, because that taught me how to make money. That taught me how to provide a service to somebody that would pay for that service. Total entrepreneurship. I remember my brother, and listen, the only thing that I fault my dad for was, at the time, we had a lot of money come in, more than any of our friends did. Tons more. But it was what you did with your money after you made it. He was weak on that. He really was. Past the beer fridge that he managed to get, he was weak on what we should do. And he never told us what to do with our money. He basically let us be kids and do it with whatever we wanted. I remember my brother and I wanted a moped, and we went in on it together, and it was a nice moped. I don't remember now what we paid for it, but I want to say it was like $350 or $400, which back then was a lot of money. But we had it like that because we were bait getters. We were night crawler catchers. And it just, I don't know, looking back, I wish my dad, now granted this is, but I wish he would have said, hey, you ought to think about investing in something more substantial than something that's going to be a depreciable asset, which was a moped. What we paid for that moped, by the time we got done beating the hell out of it a couple of years later, it wasn't worth squat. In fact, I don't know. I think we may have sold it for $50 or $25 or something like that. We were jumping shit with it. We were fucking Evel Knievel. Anyway, so yeah. So if I was to look back, and if somebody was to press me and say, "What's your best story or favorite story about your father?" It literally would be that he taught us how to make money. It was such a huge lesson. It's such an important lesson. And to this day, I love making money. I love everything about capitalism. That's one of the reasons that I hate like hell to see what's going on in this country. Enjoy your welfare state. Yeah, enjoy your welfare state. Every once in a while, I'm 45 years old now. Every once in a while, I think to myself, whenever it rains, I think to myself, you know what? I'm going to grab a flashlight and see how many worms I can get. No, I never do it. First of all, I don't think my back could handle being bent over like that, but it was truly stoop labor. But, yeah, Big John, Big John. That was a good lesson. I really, it's weird because, like I said, we didn't have the greatest relationship, but I really do miss him. I really miss him. And for those of you who may not have great relationships with your father, try to do what you can to at least mend it, if at all possible, because I will tell you that I wish I would have been closer to him, especially later in life. But it's kind of like that Cast in the Cradle song. And all of a sudden I had things to do. It was weird, real quick, and I don't mean to make this forever long, even though it is apparently going to be a forever long video. It's interesting because at certain points in my life, I know that my dad probably smiled a little bit on what I was doing, because there were certain things that I did that really mimicked some of the things he did in his life. At one point, I became a railroad conductor, and I think my dad, he smiled about that. He smiled about that. Oh, and when I started getting involved with that property in Kentucky and started to negotiate deals to make money off of it, I know he smiled about that, because nobody else in my family was going to be able to pull that off but me. And up until Obama, that was going great. Oh, God. Anyway, Big John, I hope he's resting in peace. But anyway, Superfly Fat Guy, that's my entry into your contest. Good luck with it, my friend. You are a hell of a guy. I've said it a million times, no sense in me saying it a million more. Although I probably will, but before we end this grand experiment that we all call YouTube. So anyway, that's all I got for you. Get into his contest. This will be linked to. Oh, I gotta shout somebody out, don't I? Oh, it was part of the rules. You gotta shout somebody out. Did I already shout somebody out? See, I've talked so much I can't remember. You know what? I'm gonna shout. She doesn't want this shout out, but screw it. Krysta Blade. Krysta Blade. There'll be a link to her channel. Actually, yeah, I can't shout her. She didn't want to shout. Yeah, screw her. She's gonna get a shout out from me. Krysta Blade. Awesome YouTuber. For those of you who do not know, well, I'm not even gonna tell you. She's an awesome YouTuber. Knife, gun, gear, and all kinds of stuff. Fashion, I don't know. Whatever she plans on doing. She's cute. All right, everybody, take care. See ya.